The rain didn't tap my window. It drummed like a warning I pretended not to hear. I balanced my phone on my knee and typed through the ache behind my eyes. Rent was due at 8 in the morning. Lily's antibiotics were $27 more than the coupon said. The radiator in our uptown walk-up hissed like it was furious with me personally. "Brandon, you promised," I whispered, then erased the line. Begging never worked. Facts did. I wrote what mattered. Lily's fever spiked again. "I covered rent the last 2 months. You said $1,200 by today. Don't vanish on your own daughter." I stared at the screen until my vision stuttered. Then I added the thing I should never have typed. "If you don't pay, I'll call the Morelli people you bragged about. I have the name." I hit send. Silence pooled. Outside, the rain blurred the streetlights into long, trembling spears. Our third-floor window rattled, a bus sighed at the corner. Somewhere a couple fought and apologized and promised. Chicago never stopped breathing, even when you wanted it to. I tucked Lily's blanket under her chin. Her skin was cool at last. The lavender nightlight painted the room soft and safe, an illusion I needed badly. She opened her eyes just enough to find my hand. "Water, 2 sips," I whispered, then back to dreams. She obeyed, because 4-year-olds are better at trusting than surviving. Back on the thrifted couch, I waited for the 3 dots to appear. Nothing. I set the phone face down, because adults do childish things when they're afraid, and rubbed the sore spot under my left shoulder blade that meant I'd carried too many shifts and too many worries. The phone buzzed. I flipped it over so fast it skidded to the rug. Who is this? Not Brandon's number. My stomach went cold, then colder. I squinted at the contacts. I'd tapped the line above his name, an area code I didn't recognize. Maybe a rideshare driver I'd once texted. Maybe a mistake. Maybe not. "Sorry, wrong person. Please ignore." A beat, then another. Then, what Morelli name? Not a question. An extraction. I typed nothing for exactly 10 seconds and counted my heartbeat, because someone on the internet had told me that slows panic. I erased 3 responses, then sent the safest lie I could find. My ex mentioned the name. "I'm tired. Ignore me, my mistake." "Your name." I glanced toward Lily's room, felt a tiny gravity pulling me back to her. I should have blocked the number. I should have thrown the phone into the sink and poured coffee over it, like holy water. Instead, I stared at the cursor, blinking like a slow metronome inside my life. I typed, "This isn't necessary. I'm sorry to have bothered you." No one replied. The rain got louder. The radiator spit. I stood, turned off the lamp, and in the darkness our living room looked like a set waiting for actors who would never arrive. My thoughts did that jagged snowstorm thing. I told myself the text would be swallowed by the city and dissolved. The phone buzzed again. "I already know who you are, Ms. Hayes." Every letter was a small knife. 4708 North Racine Avenue, Unit 3F. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. Even my fear held still, like prey. "How is Lily's throat?" The phone slipped out of my hand and thudded into the rug. My knees found the couch edge. My fingers found the armrest. For 3 seconds, I forgot language. Sounds came, nothing that could pass for a word. I grabbed the phone and typed with hands that didn't belong to me. "Who are you?" The answer landed before I could blink. "The man your ex stole from. Open the door." I stood in a body that felt borrowed and crossed our living room in 5 shuffling steps. The deadbolt looked toy small. The chain looked thinner than thread. My ear leaned to the wood. Footsteps. No, only the rain and the bus and the city's iron heart. "Don't," I whispered. To myself, to him, to fate. 3 quiet knocks answered. Precise. Lily's voice floated down the hallway. A small ghost worried about the living. "It's okay," I called, steady as I could. "It's just the rain." The knocks didn't repeat. The phone hummed again. I'm not here to hurt your daughter. I'm here to keep her alive. Open the door, Nora. He used my first name the way people who sign checks use pens. Turn the lock. The hallway light sliced across my floor, thin and pale. A man filled the doorway without pushing it wider. Tailored coat. Rain beating on ink-black fabric. Posture like a verdict. Another stood behind his shoulder. Larger face like a wall you pay not to climb. I couldn't see the first man's eyes with the backlight sculpting him into a shadow. Then he shifted, and blue cut through me. "Ms. Hayes," he said. The voice didn't need to be loud to be heard. "I'm Dante Morelli." I swallowed jagged glass and tasted penny. "I texted the wrong number." "You texted the right one," he corrected, softly. "Brandon Cole took something from my family. When men like him make mistakes, women like you pay the price. I came so you don't." 1,000 rude replies tried to climb into my mouth. I chose the one that wouldn't get us killed. "My daughter is sleeping." His gaze flicked past me and came back, measuring my word as truth and my heartbeat as fact. "Good," he said. "Let's keep it that way." Behind him, the bigger man shifted a fraction. "Clear," he murmured, like he had catalogued my hallway, the coat hooks, the flicker in the stairwell light. "I'm not letting you in," I said, and heard the tremor I couldn't kill. Dante didn't force the door. He didn't raise a hand. He simply angled his shoulders so the light kissed his face, and responsibility settled on his features, like a crown he had never wanted but wore perfectly. "Then we can talk here," he said. "Until your neighbor opens her door and wonders why the black SUVs on your block turned off their engines at once." I hadn't looked outside. I did now. They sat in a quiet row along the curb, gleaming despite the rain, idle as sharks. A driver stared straight ahead. Another spoke into his sleeve. A third scanned. They were here for me because of Brandon. They were here for Lily. I kept my voice small. He owes child support. He owes us everything. I was angry. I typed a name. That's all. "Nothing is all," Dante said. "Not in this city." "What did he take?" "Information," Dante said, and the word wrapped 1,000 weapons. Names, numbers, routes, contingencies. "Wrong hands, wrong hour, people. Don't go home." "He's a liar," I said. "He's not a mastermind." "Desperation elevates average men," Dante said, "and collapses empires." I breathed once, twice. I felt the logic of doing the wrong thing because the right thing had stopped answering your calls. I felt the way Brandon's laugh had once smoothed a hard day, and the way it had become a thin blade you couldn't sit on without bleeding. "Why tell me any of this?" I asked. "Why not handle your problem and leave us out?" "Because you're already in." His eyes moved, not to my face, but to my hem. The tremor had stopped. "Brandon listed you as his emergency contact when he started running numbers for a front we own." "No," I said. "He wouldn't." "He did." Dante's mouth angled. "Not a smile, not a cruelty, something colder. And your pharmacy on Broadway. My company owns that building." When Lily's prescription hit at midnight, my system flashed. So I knew two truths at once. Your daughter needed care, and your text was not a prank. "Is there a version of tonight where you leave?" I asked. "The version where you and your child come with me?" I shook my head so hard my hair slapped my cheek. "That's not no, absolutely not." "Ms. Hayes," he said, and the patience in his voice sounded expensive. "Volkov's men are already moving because Brandon tried to sell them a copy. They won't knock. They will remove the door and your choices with it. My way buys you time." "You want leverage?" I said. "Me, Lily, I want you alive," he said. "My competitors don't have that on their to-do list." "I can call the police." "You can," he agreed. "You can also hope patrol beats out a private convoy on a rainy night, and that my drivers will debate jurisdiction in the street. Or you can pack a bag and let my doctor see your daughter in an hour." A floorboard creaked behind me. Lily's small cough broke the hallway open like a secret you never meant to say out loud. Dante's eyes softened half a degree. Go to her, he said. Take 5 minutes. Bring what you can carry. He stepped back from the threshold. The big Menon tone I learned later didn't move at all. I closed the door without locking it, because pretending I had a choice had consequences too. In Lily's room, the lavender light made a stage of her cheeks and lashes. She blinked at me. Bad dream, I asked. Thirsty. I held her cup and the world with 2 shaking hands. We're taking a little trip, I said, like it was a thing families did for fun. Just for a few days. Are there fish, maybe? I said. I packed faster than thought. A sweater, leggings, socks, a threadbare rabbit named Mr. Butter, her antibiotic, a book with rounded corners. For me, 2 shirts, cash from the coffee can behind the flower, the lease with my name, Lily's birth certificate in a plastic sleeve. I paused on Brandon's name where it should have been and wasn't, and felt the hollow like a map of everywhere we would never go. I carried Lily on my hip. Her fever had broken, but her heat remained, her trust remained. Her entire small, impossible life remained. I would commit crimes against God and city to protect it. I opened the door. Dante said nothing. He simply pivoted, an orbit I had accidentally entered, and the 3 of us moved down the stairs like a procession. My child, my fear, and a man who could end both. The building smelled like heat and dust, and the neighbors cooking. Mrs. Delgado's door cracked open. I tilted Lily so her sleepy face was visible and mouthed, "It's okay." She closed the door, prayer lips moving. On the sidewalk, the rain had thinned 2 needles. A driver opened a rear door. The interior glowed the color of late whiskey. I hesitated. Anton didn't touch me. He only angled his body to block the street from our backs, a human wall. Lily whispered, "Is that ours?" "For tonight," I said. We slid inside. Leather took our weight like a promise. The door thunked, a sound my bones recognized as final. "Home," Dante told the driver. I stared. "Home. My Lake Forest residence," he said. "Security you can't buy on a city block. You'll be safe there." "Kidnapping with bottled water," I muttered, because sarcasm is the last oxygen of the drowning. "If I meant to kidnap you," Dante said, and the way he said it made me believe him, we wouldn't be having this conversation. The convoy moved. Streetlights bent and broke across wet glass. Lily's head slid to my chest. Her breath slowed. I realized, with something like nausea, that I wasn't sure whether the tremor in my hands was fear or relief. "You said Brandon took information," I said, voice low. "What kind?" "The kind that erases people," he said, "and makes others very rich." "Why tell me anything?" I asked. "Because no one tells you things," he said, and I hated how true that sounded. "And because you will make smarter choices if you know the shape of the room you're in." "What's the shape?" 3 crews, competing clocks," he said. "Brandon in the middle, starving, stupid, dangerous. You on the edge, visible enough to hurt. Me between. You can't be everywhere," I said. "I don't need to be," he said. "I need to be first where it matters." The wipers kept time. The city thinned. The highway opened like a throat. I watched the skyline shrink in the side glass and wanted to apologize to it for leaving without calling. "You're very sure of yourself," I said. "Confidence is cheaper than funerals," he replied. "Let the silence ride with us." My phone buzzed in my pocket, Brandon's name on the screen now, desperate and late. I didn't answer. I didn't owe him the courtesy of my fear. Dante's eyes cut sideways. "You'll talk to him," he said, "but not yet." When Lily is asleep in a bed that locks from the inside," he said, and I understood the shape of care he offered. Steel, not softness. The gate swallowed us. The drive curved through trees and hedges that had never scraped for rent. The house rose from the dark like a choice with consequences. Inside, warmth met the wet. A woman with silver-shot black hair and a spine made of architecture appeared like she'd been conjured. "Rosa," Dante said. She took us in with 1 glance and 10 judgments I could not read. "The small one is ill." Better, I said, but yes. Doctor in 30, she replied. Upstairs, East Suite. Dante looked at me as if offering, not ordering. It's yours for now. My voice found the seam between gratitude and fury. You run a very gentle prison. Rosa's mouth didn't even twitch. We don't keep prisoners here, she said. Only guests who forget they can leave worse places. She led us up a sweeping staircase I would have hated if I had the energy. The suite opened in a hush of pale carpet and the kind of linen you only see on hotel websites. I set Lily on the bed. She burrowed, Mr. Butters supervised. Rosa handed me a glass of water and a cloth, like we were old friends. You will take food, she said, which wasn't a question. Later, I said. After the doctor. After what? After I found a version of tonight, where I woke up. Dante stood in the doorway as if doors answered to him. He didn't cross the threshold. Respect or theater, maybe both. When the doctor leaves, he said, we'll talk about Brandon. Talk, I echoed, because the word could cover anything from negotiation to storm. And about what you will need if you decide not to run anymore, he added. Who says I've been running? He didn't smile, he didn't blink. He only glanced at the overnight bag with the plastic sleeve sticking out the birth certificate I couldn't afford to lose, and couldn't bear to see, and then back at me. Your life does, he said. I wanted to tell him that my life had teeth, that it had fed itself on coffee and double shifts and the currency of small miracles. Instead, I said nothing and tucked Lily's hair behind her ear, the move I had done 1,000 times and would do 1,000 more if the world would let me. A knock, gentler, and a man with kind eyes and a medical bag entered. He introduced himself as Dr. Vallon. He didn't ask for payment up front. He checked Lily's throat and ears and listened to her lungs, and said words like mild and precaution, and tonight she sleeps. Rosa appeared with a spoon and a bottle, and the kind of efficiency that looks like love if you stand at the right angle. When the doctor left, Dante didn't step in. He stayed exactly where he was and said, when you're ready. The problem with ready is that it never arrives. I met his eyes anyway. Tell me everything Brandon did, I said. Then tell me what I have to do to keep my child out of the middle. Agreed, he said. But first, one rule. Of course there was a rule. You don't use Lily, I said, beating him to it. Not as leverage, not as bait. Not in your language, not in your head. If that's your plan, you turn around now and let the other men tear this house apart later, because at least I'll know who you are. He absorbed it like rain on asphalt, vanished instantly, but you knew it had mattered. Understood, he said. Say it, I replied. I don't use Lily, Dante Morelli said, and the room did a small, impossible thing. It exhaled. Okay, I said. Now tell me why a wrong text knows my name. A phone vibrated in his pocket. He silenced it without looking, which told me it wasn't the kind of call that decides a night. Mine buzzed too. Brandon again. Third time. Fourth. I'll block him, I said, and didn't. Don't, Dante said. You're going to call him. But you're going to do it after you hear what I found in his apartment. Printer's row, convenient to the L, inconvenient to the truth. He straightened from the doorframe, not a threaten unfolding. When you hear it, he added, you won't say he wouldn't, you'll say, he almost did, and then you'll decide how to make sure almost never becomes forever. Show me, I said, and my voice didn't shake this time. He nodded once and stepped aside to let Rosa pass with tea. I hadn't asked for and would drink anyway because I needed something warm to hold that wasn't a child or a promise. In the hall. The house hummed a security system at rest. A generator pretending it was just another appliance. A silence trained to listen. I realized the question forming in my mouth wasn't about data or danger. It was simpler. It was worse. What had Brandon loved more than his daughter? I followed the man who had surrounded my street and somehow made it feel like a wall instead of a trap. And I wondered what price is fair for safety when safety is the first honest thing anyone offers you in years. The rain had stopped. The night had not. I didn't sleep in the car. I couldn't. The highway stretched endless outside the tinted glass, slick with the last of the rain. Chicago's skyline shrank behind us until it was just a smear of light and memory. Lily slept on my lap, her damp curls pressed against my chest, her tiny breath soft and steady, the only proof that I hadn't lost everything yet. I told myself not to close my eyes, not in front of him, not in the presence of Dante Morelli. He sat beside me, his body angled slightly toward the window, as if the dark world rushing past belonged to him and he was simply checking on what was already his. He hadn't spoken since we left Uptown. He didn't need to. The silence in that car was louder than any threat. I caught my reflection in the glass. Wide eyes, clenched jaw, hair sticking in damp strands to my cheek. I looked like someone on the verge of collapse, but collapse wasn't an option. Lily didn't know who this man was. She thought this was just an adventure. I had to keep it that way. When the SUV finally slowed, it was past midnight. We turned off the highway, onto a road lined with trees so tall they formed black arches overhead. Then gates loomed into view, enormous, guarded. They opened with a quietness that felt choreographed, like even the metal had been trained to obey him without complaint. "This is it," Dante said, his first words in almost an hour. His voice was low, even carrying the weight of someone who never needed to repeat himself. The driveway curved endlessly, flanked by hedges trimmed into obedience. Then the house appeared, or mansion, estate, fortress, whatever name you wanted to give it. Glass, stone, steel. It didn't just sit on the land, it commanded it. I clutched Lily tighter, suddenly aware of how small we were, how replaceable. The SUV stopped beneath a wide portico. A woman waited at the top of the steps, straight-backed, silver-streaked hair pulled into a severe knot, eyes that had already assessed me before I'd even opened the door. Behind her stood Anton, the wall of muscle from the hallway. He had his hands clasped neatly in front of him, like a bodyguard at a funeral. "Rosa," Dante said simply, as if that explained everything, but she didn't frown either. "The East Suite is ready," she said, her accent faint but unmistakably Italian. "Dr. Vallon will arrive within the hour." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. At least Lily would be seen by someone who wasn't me, armed with a bottle of generic ibuprofen and frantic prayers. Inside, the house was impossibly wide. Marble floors reflected soft pools of light. Art I couldn't name but knew was worth more than my entire life lined the walls. Everything smelled faintly of leather, polish, and control. Rosa led us up a staircase that curved like a ribbon into the second floor. The suite she opened was bigger than my apartment, 2 bedrooms, a sitting area, and windows that looked out on grounds lit by discreet spotlights. "She needs rest," Rosa said, handing me a folded blanket, her tone brisk, efficient. "There are clothes in the dresser, not hers, but they will serve." I looked at Dante, who had remained in the doorway, his presence like a second shadow stretching into the room. "You've thought of everything," I said, unable to hide the bitterness. "I've thought of survival," he corrected. "For you or for us?" His gaze didn't waver. Both. Before I could respond, a knock came at the door. "I'm Dr. Vallon," he said, with a slight bow. "May I?" I nodded, hovering at the bedside as he examined Lily. He checked her throat, listened to her lungs, and whispered encouragements that made her smile in her half-sleep. He prescribed a course of antibiotics, handed Rosa precise instructions, and assured me Lily's fever was broken. Relief washed through me, but it didn't erase the knot in my stomach. When the doctor left, Rosa disappeared as quietly as she had appeared. Only Dante remained. He stepped inside now, just far enough to close the door behind him. The click of the latch felt heavier than it should have. "We need to talk," he said. I crossed my arms. About what Brandon stole from you. About why my daughter and I are suddenly prisoners in your mansion. Guests, he corrected again. Alive guests. Which is more than I can promise if you stayed in Uptown. I let out a laugh, sharp and humorless. So this is your kindness, surrounding me with cars, pulling me from my home, and locking me in a gilded cage. You think this is a cage. A cage is what Volkov would build for you. This is a fortress, and it is the only thing standing between your child and a grave. The name hit me like cold water. Volkov, Russian, brutal, patient. He's been circling this city for months, waiting for a weakness. Brandon gave him one. His voice sharpened. You mentioned my name in that text. That alone makes you leverage. You understand? I swallowed hard. So what now? You keep me here until you catch him. Yes, and you'll help me find him. I shook my head instantly. No, I want nothing to do with this. Brandon left us months ago. He's not my problem anymore. Dante's eyes darkened. He made you his problem the moment he used your name. He tied you to my business, whether you knew it or not. And if I can find you in minutes, others will too. My pulse thudded in my ears. He was right. God help me. He was right. What if I refuse? I asked, voice low. And when Volkov comes, you'll wish I hadn't. Silence stretched. I glanced at Lily, curled up and safe for the moment, and knew the truth before I admitted it. Fine, I said, but I want guarantees. Lily is never bait, never leverage. You don't use her to get to him. For a moment, Dante didn't respond. Then he nodded once, slowly understood. Say it, I pressed. His gaze didn't flicker. I don't use Lily. Something in my chest loosened, just a fraction. Good, I whispered. Dante studied me, and for the first time since he'd appeared in my doorway, I thought I saw something flicker behind his control. Not softness, exactly, but recognition. Respect, maybe. You'll see tomorrow, he said finally, what Brandon left behind. And then you'll understand why this is no longer just my problem, more his. It's yours too. He turned toward the door, then paused. Rest while you can, Nora. Safety has teeth. And right now, those teeth are mine. The door closed. I sat beside Lily, my hands trembling against the blanket, and wondered how much of my life had just ended and how much had only just begun. I didn't dream that night. Sleep came in fragments, a jagged kind of exhaustion that left me more hollow than rested. When dawn finally broke, pale light seeped through the gauzy curtains. Lily stirred beside me, her curls tangled against the pillow, her little hand wrapped around Mr. Butter like he was the one keeping her alive. For a moment, I let myself imagine we were in some seaside hotel, that this was vacation, not captivity. But the silence was too heavy, the air too careful. A knock came, soft but insistent. It's Rosa, the voice said through the wood. I rose quietly, tucking the blanket around Lily before opening the door. Rosa stood there, perfectly composed, a tray balanced in her hands. Steam rose from a pot of tea and a smaller cup of hot chocolate. For the child, she explained. Mr. Morelli thought she might like it when she wakes. I accepted the tray, unsettled by how seamlessly this woman managed both tenderness and command. Thank you, I murmured. Her sharp eyes held mine. Breakfast will be served downstairs, but Mr. Morelli requests you in his study first. He said it cannot wait. Of course he did. I set the tray down and brushed a kiss over Lily's forehead. She sighed, murmuring something about pancakes in her sleep. I whispered, "Stay resting, baby. Mommy will be right back." The corridor stretched long and silent. Rosa led me down to the main floor, her steps precise, not a sound out of place. The house seemed designed to intimidate dark wood, towering ceilings, glass that reflected your own uncertainty back at you. The study door was already ajar. Somehow, that made him more dangerous, not less. He ended a phone call in Italian, pocketed the device, and looked at me like I was the next problem to solve. "Did you sleep?" he asked, as well as anyone can under house arrest. His lips almost curved almost. "You'll want to sit. I'll stand." He didn't argue. Instead, he reached for a folder on his desk and slid several photographs across the polished wood toward me. My heart stalled when I saw them. Lily at the park. Lily outside her preschool. Lily on the stoop of our building, clutching Mr. Butter. Some photos included me tired, distracted, never aware of the lens. Others, she was alone. "What is this?" My voice scraped out of my throat. "Your ex-boyfriend's apartment," Dante said evenly. "My men found these pinned to his wall." Dante's tone was quiet. "Follow her every move. Document her routines." I wanted to deny it, to defend Brandon even after everything. "There's more," Dante said. He lifted a worn pink backpack onto the desk. Unicorns danced across the fabric, faded from too many washes. "She outgrew it last year. I thought I'd donated it." "Inside," he said. My hands shook as I unzipped it. A change of children's clothes, her favorite bedtime book, a small envelope of cash, and her passport. My knees nearly gave out. "No, no, no, no." "He was planning to take her," Dante said, his voice stripped of ornament. Whether out of some misguided sense of protection or as leverage, I cannot say. But he was ready. Hot tears blurred my vision. I slammed the backpack shut and shoved it away. "You planted this. If I had wanted to frighten you," Dante said, leaning forward, "I could have used 100 simpler methods. I don't need to fabricate the truth." The room tilted around me. Brandon, who couldn't be bothered to pay rent, had been preparing to steal our daughter away, to drag her into whatever hell he'd sold himself to. The betrayal carved deeper than any wound I'd thought possible. "Because he's desperate," Dante said. "He thinks Lily is the one thing no one will touch, that having her will keep him safe." My stomach twisted. Safe for him, deadly for her. I forced myself upright, gripping the edge of the desk. "Where is he?" Dante studied me carefully, weighing my tone. "Gone before we arrived." But he didn't cover his tracks well. "We believe he's still in the city." "And what do you want from me?" "You're going to call him," Dante said simply. "With my phone, he won't answer mine. But yours." His eyes narrowed. "Yours he will not ignore." "I'm not luring him to you," I snapped. Dante's gaze flicked to the backpack, to the photographs, then back to me. "He was going to take her, Nora. Do you really think the police will stop a man like Brandon before Volkov does? And if the Russians get to him first, they'll trace every thread, to him, to you, to Lily." My breath came too fast, too shallow. "You don't understand. I understand perfectly," Dante cut in. His voice was low, controlled, but it pulsed with something dangerous. "He stole from me. He betrayed me. That makes him my responsibility. But he tied you to it when he dragged your name into my world. And if you think you can step back out now, you're wrong." I closed my eyes, inhaled and exhaled until my lungs stopped shaking. Then I opened them and met his stare. "Fine, I'll call him. But on one condition." His eyebrow lifted. "Condition? You promise no matter what happens, Lily is off limits." His jaw flexed. Then he nodded once deliberate. "Agreed. Say it," I demanded. His blue eyes locked on mine. "I don't use your daughter. Ever." The words lodged inside me like a stake. I wasn't sure I believed him. Not entirely. But I wanted to. God, I needed to. He handed me his phone. "When you're ready." My pulse thundered in my ears. But hadn't it already? I pressed the green button. The line rang once. Twice my throat went dry, every instinct screaming at me to hang up. On the third ring, Brandon's voice came through, low, wary, like he was already expecting trouble. "Nora." Just hearing his voice made my stomach twist. It carried the same charm that had once convinced me to believe in him, the same tone that had promised me the world, only to hand me empty rent envelopes and broken apologies. "It's me," I said, my voice tight. "We need to talk, face to face." A pause. Too long, he was calculating, weighing risks, maybe even listening for background noise. "Where are you calling from?" "That's not your number." "Does it matter?" I snapped. "You owe me answers, Brandon. You owe Lily answers. Meet me tonight." He sighed, the sound of a man cornered. "It's not safe. You made it unsafe." I cut him off. "I found Lily's passport in your apartment. The backpack, the cash. You were planning to take her." Silence. Then, almost a whisper, "You don't understand what's happening. Then explain it to me." 8 o'clock. Blue cup coffee on Wabash. "If you want to see Lily again." But Dante had told me to use the buttons only I knew how to press. "Finally," Brandon said. "Fine, 8. But you come alone." The line went dead. My hand trembled as I returned the phone to Dante. He studied me, unreadable. "Good," he said, simply. "Very good." I wanted to throw the phone at his chest, scream at him for turning me into bait. Instead, I whispered, "If anything happens to Lily while I'm gone, she's safer here than anywhere in Chicago," he said, his voice like steel wrapped in silk. "Anton will guard her door. No one touches her." I hated that part of me almost believed him. The Blue Cup coffee shop was one of those places that tried too hard to be casual worn wood tables, Edison bulbs, chalkboard menus. At night, the neon sign buzzed against the rain-slicked glass, the street outside quiet except for the occasional cab. I sat inside Dante's SUV across the street, my nerves fraying with every passing second. Dante was beside me, dressed in another tailored suit, though less formal than before. 2 more SUVs idled nearby, strategically placed like black chess pieces. "You understand the rules," Dante said. "Yes," I muttered. I go in. I make him sit. Dante's eyes flicked to me. "You're not bait, Nora. You're leverage. There's a difference that's supposed to make me feel better." "It should," he said softly, almost to himself. I pushed open the door before I could think better of it. The cool air slapped my face. My boots clicked on wet pavement as I crossed the street. I gripped the handle of the coffee shop door and stepped inside. The bell chimed. Brandon sat in the back corner, who'd pulled low, a coffee in front of him he hadn't touched. He looked thinner, sharper, his eyes darting constantly toward the door. When he saw me, something almost like relief flickered across his face, then hardened into suspicion. "Nora," he said, standing slightly. "Sit," I ordered. My voice surprised even me, strong, controlled. He sank back down, hands restless on the table. "Where's Lily?" "Safe. Which is more than I can say for you." His eyes narrowed. "You don't know what you're doing." "Then explain it. Why the backpack? Why the passport?" He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "I was trying to protect her, I hissed. "By kidnapping her, by dragging her into whatever hell you've sold yourself into. You don't understand, Nora. These people, they don't stop. They'll come for you. For her, I needed leverage." My stomach churned. "You were going to use your daughter as a shield." His silence was answer enough. A man in a dark coat lingering by the corner. Another across the street, pretending to smoke. Not Dante's men. Russians. Panic surged. Brandon noticed too, his face drained. They followed me. My pulse spiked. "Then we leave. Now," he shook his head violently. "If I move, they'll know. Just stay calm." A man stepped in, broad-shouldered, cold eyes sweeping the cafe. Another followed. Both spoke with accents thick as frost. "Coffee," one muttered, though his eyes never left us. Brandon's hand gripped mine under the table, trembling. "They're here for me. You have to go." But before I could move, the bell chimed again. Dante, he entered like he owned the air, his presence filling the small cafe. Anton was right behind him. The Russians stiffened, but Dante's calm was a weapon sharper than theirs. "Gentlemen," he said smoothly, glancing at them with polite disdain before fixing his gaze on Brandon. "We need to talk." Brandon stood, panic in his eyes. "Not here, not now." "Sit down," Dante ordered. The Russians exchanged looks. Anton moved first, slamming the man's wrist against the counter. A gun clattered to the floor. The barista screamed and ducked. The other Russian lunged, but Dante stepped aside, fluid, controlled, and in an instant had him pinned against the wall with the barrel of a gun pressed under his jaw. Brandon bolted for the back door. "Brandon," I shouted, but he was already gone. Dante cursed under his breath, slammed the Russian into the wall once more, then released him just long enough for Anton to finish the job. Both men were down within seconds, groaning, disarmed. Dante turned to me, eyes blazing. "Are you hurt?" I shook my head, still trembling. "Then we move now." We rushed out into the street, headlights flooding the pavement as the convoy pulled up. Dante shoved me into the SUV, Anton right behind. Brandon was gone, but the Russians had made their move, and for the first time I realized Dante had been right all along. We weren't just caught in his war, we were the prize everyone else wanted to claim. The ride back to the estate was silent, but not peaceful. I sat with Lily's rabbit clutched in my hands, staring at the blurred streaks of city lights as we sped north. My body buzzed with leftover adrenaline, my mind replaying the chaos inside that coffee shop. Brandon's wild eyes, the Russian's cold stares, Dante's steady violence. Every detail felt carved into my memory, sharp and unyielding. Brandon had run. Again, that was his specialty, running and leaving others to clean up the wreckage. This time, he'd dragged Lily and me into a world that had teeth and claws. Dante's voice finally cut through the suffocating silence. "You see it now." I turned toward him, heat flaring in my chest. "See what? That? I was stupid enough to believe you'd protect me without turning me into bait." His expression didn't change, but his eyes glinted, sharp and deliberate. "You're alive. That cafe should have been a morgue by now. My men kept it from becoming one. And Brandon," my voice cracked, anger colliding with despair. "You let him run." "No," Dante said calmly. "He ran. There's a difference." I wanted to scream, to tell him how hollow his distinctions sounded. Without Dante and Anton, I wouldn't have walked out of there. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass, whispering, "He'll never stop. Brandon won't stop until he drags us all down with him." Dante didn't reply, but I felt his gaze linger on me, heavy as iron. When we arrived at the estate, Rosa was waiting in the foyer, her sharp eyes flicking between me and Dante, reading the story written on our faces without a single word exchanged. "Upstairs," she ordered quietly. "The child is fine. She has not woken." Relief washed through me, so strong it nearly dropped me to my knees. I rushed past her, up the wide staircase, into the suite where Lily slept peacefully in the oversized bed, her curls spread like a halo. I sat beside her, clutching her hand, my body trembling now that the danger was over. The adrenaline had burned away, leaving me hollow and raw. I didn't hear Dante enter until he spoke. "You held your ground tonight." I turned sharply, bristling. "Don't you dare turn this into some twisted compliment." I was terrified. I still am. His gaze softened barely, but enough that I saw it. "Fear keeps you sharp. Fear is why you and your daughter are alive." "Fear isn't living," I snapped. For a moment, silence stretched between us. He studied Lily, his expression unreadable, before finally saying, "You have my word again. I will not let her be used. Not by me, not by anyone." I wanted to believe him. God help me, I wanted to. But words were easy. Promises even easier. I'd been burned by both. Still, something in his tone anchored inside me. The next morning, Rosa arrived with a tray of breakfast. Lily was delighted pancakes, shaped like hearts, strawberries arranged in a perfect circle. She laughed, her small world untouched by the shadows closing in. For a moment, it felt almost normal, but normal didn't last. When Rosa left, I found a slip of paper tucked under the tray. My breath caught as I read the single line written in Dante's precise handwriting. "Meet me in the West Garden. We need to talk." I hesitated, heart pounding, before slipping out while Lily played with her crayons on the bed. The West Garden was vast, manicured, quiet. I found Dante near a stone fountain where koi swam lazily beneath the surface. He didn't look at me as I approached, his gaze fixed on the water. "Volkov won't stop," he said. "The cafe was a test. Next time, it won't be a public place. It'll be your doorstep or hers." His eyes flicked toward the house, toward Lily's window. My chest tightened. "Then why not end this now? Why not use me the way you want to and get it over with?" He finally turned, his expression colder than the morning air. "Because you said no, and I told you I heard you." Something in me cracked at that, not from fear, but from the realization that Dante Morelli, Mafia heir, criminal king, was binding himself to a promise he had no reason to keep. I swallowed hard. "So what happens now?" He stepped closer, his presence like a tide pulling me in whether I wanted it or not. "Now we wait for Brandon to make his next mistake, and he will. Men like him always do. And in the meantime," Dante's eyes searched mine, unflinching. "In the meantime, you learn the truth about the people hunting him, about why they want what he stole, and about why you, Nora Hayes, cannot afford to crack not, even once." The way he said my name made it sound like both a warning and a vow. I shivered, not from the cold, but from the awareness that whatever thin line separated protector from predator was beginning to blur. And the most dangerous crack forming in the ice wasn't out there with Brandon or Volkov. It was inside me. I didn't want to follow him. Every instinct screamed at me to stay in the suite with Lily, to lock the door, to pretend this house wasn't full of men who killed for a living. But Dante didn't ask. He walked, and something in me, fear, anger, or maybe something darker, compelled me after him. We ended up in a room I hadn't seen before. A library, but not the cozy kind, with overstuffed chairs and soft lamps. This was a chamber of power. Floor-to-ceiling shelves, leather-bound volumes that smelled like old money, and a long oak table, polished to a mirror's gleam. Screens glowed at one end, men in dark suits murmuring over them in low voices. Dante dismissed them with a glance. They vanished like shadows trained to obey. Only Anton stayed. He took up a position near the door, arms folded, eyes scanning even though the room was fortress secure. Dante opened a sleek black case on the table. Inside were folders, hard drives, photographs. He slid one folder toward me. "Brandon didn't steal cash," he said quietly. "He stole this." I opened the folder. My breath hitched. Names, hundreds of them, typed in neat columns, addresses. Phone numbers, codes I didn't understand. Some were highlighted in red, others underlined. On the next page, there were photographs, grainy surveillance shots, license plates, receipts. "These are your clients?" I asked, though the word felt wrong. Dante's expression didn't change. "My world doesn't run on bullets alone, Nora. It runs on trust. And this," he tapped the ledger, "is trust written down. My allies, my enemies, the people I pay to look away, the people I blackmail to keep silent." Brandon put all of it in play the moment he ran. The room tilted. "Politicians, judges." "You're saying," I whispered, "if this falls into the wrong hands." "Chicago burns," Dante finished. I pressed a hand to my stomach. "And Brandon thought he could sell this." "He already tried," Dante said. His jaw flexed. "Volkov paid for a copy. But Brandon is greedy, and greed makes men sloppy. He dangled it to more than one buyer. That's why we're running out of time." I stared at the ledger until the words blurred. All this time I thought Brandon was just a coward, a man running from child support and commitments. But this This was betrayal on a scale I couldn't comprehend. "He's going to get us killed," I whispered. Dante leaned closer, his voice a low rumble that made the hair on my arms stand up. "Not if I get to him first." We studied the ledger together. Dante pointed out names with surgeon-like precision, explaining which ones were crucial, which ones could bring entire crews down. His tone was calm, but I heard the strain beneath it, the way a man sounds when every second is borrowed. Anton finally spoke from his post near the door. "Volkov won't wait long. He'll want to use the ledger before we can lock it down." I flinched at his voice. I'd almost forgotten he was there. Dante didn't look up. Then we moved faster. The silence stretched a beat too long. Then Anton said, "I worked for him. A lifetime ago." Ice trickled down my spine. "You what?" He didn't flinch. "Before I swore loyalty to Dante's family. I was younger, stupider. Volkov promised money, power. I saw the truth too late." I turned back to Dante, my voice sharp. "And you trust him?" Dante's gaze was steady, unreadable. "Anton saved my life more than once. He's earned his place here." My chest tightened. The paranoia must have shown on my face, because Dante said softly, "Betrayal cuts deepest from those closest. I learned that when my father died. I won't make the same mistake twice." Something flickered in his eyes, pain, raw and unhidden for a split second. Then it was gone, buried beneath steel. I should have walked out. I should have said this wasn't my war. But instead I found myself asking, "How did your father die?" His jaw tightened. He trusted the wrong man, someone inside, someone who gave our enemies a list of safe houses. I was 22, old enough to understand, too young to stop it. His voice lowered. "The night he died, I promised myself I would never let another ledger exist. Yet here we are." The room was quiet, except for the soft bubbling of the fountain outside the window. My chest ached with something I didn't want to name. Dante turned a page, his finger pausing on a set of numbers and addresses. "This is where Brandon will go next." I blinked. "How do you know?" "Because desperation makes men predictable. He'll sell to whoever is still willing to buy." I leaned closer, scanning the page. A street name caught my eye. My breath caught. "I know this place," I whispered. "Brandon used to take calls there. An old warehouse near the river." He thought I didn't notice, but I broke off, shame flushing through me. How many signs had I ignored? Dante's eyes sharpened. "Good. That's where we start." He snapped the folder shut and slid it back into the case. The sound echoed in the vast room like a gunshot. "Tomorrow," he said, "we end this game." I swallowed hard, clutching the edge of the table to steady myself. Tomorrow, another battlefield I hadn't chosen. As I followed him out of the library, one thought circled relentlessly in my head. Brandon had stolen a ledger of names, but the name that mattered most was mine. I stood in the back of the SUV, peering through the tinted glass as the Kinsey Street Bridge loomed ahead. The lights of downtown glittered behind us like another world, one I wasn't sure I belonged to anymore. Dante had chosen this place. Neutral ground, he called it. No civilians, just shadows, water, and the echo of traffic above. But nothing about tonight felt neutral. Beside me, Dante adjusted the cuffs of his charcoal suit jacket, the movement precise, ritualistic. He wasn't nervous. I wasn't even sure the man was capable of it. He radiated calm the way fire radiates heat, dangerous and impossible to ignore. Anton sat in the front seat, murmuring into a radio. Other SUVs idled nearby, their engines a low hum. Men moved in the darkness, ghosts with guns, waiting for the signal. I pressed my palms together to stop their trembling. "He'll come," I whispered, more to myself than to Dante. "He'll come," Dante agreed. "Rats can't resist cheese, even when they know the trap is waiting." I shot him a glance. "He's still Lily's father." His gaze flicked to mine, unyielding. He stopped being a father when he put her name in my world. I wanted to argue, but the truth clamped down on my tongue. The plan was simple, at least on paper. Brandon would meet a Russian intermediary tied to Volkov. He'd bring the last piece of the stolen ledger, a shard of data that made him dangerous enough to keep alive. We'd intercept, quick, clean, at least. That's what Dante promised. But I knew better than to believe in clean endings. Dante let me come only as far as the SUV. "You'll watch from here," he said, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. I hated it. Every nerve in my body screamed to confront Brandon myself, to demand the truth. Part of me feared what I might do if I stood in front of Brandon. So I sat. The first headlights appeared at the far end of the bridge. A beat-up sedan rolled slowly forward, its tires crunching over damp concrete. My breath caught. Brandon stepped out. He looked worse than the last time I saw him. Hollow cheeks, jittery movements, eyes darting everywhere. He clutched a worn backpack to his chest like a life raft. For a moment, he was just the man I remembered, the man who used to whisper promises in the dark, the man who made me laugh when the world felt heavy. For a moment, my heart clenched. Then I remembered the pink unicorn backpack he'd packed for Lily, and the clench hardened into something jagged. Another car pulled up from the opposite end of the bridge, sleek, black, too polished for the rusted steel surroundings. 2 men got out. Russians I recognized, the posture the same cold precision I'd seen at the cafe. One called out in accented English, "You have it." Brandon nodded nervously, holding up the backpack. "You got the cash?" The Russian smirked, producing a slim case. They met halfway across the bridge, the steel beams groaning overhead as if the city itself was holding its breath. From the SUV, I leaned forward, whispering, "Now, Dante, now." But he didn't move, not yet. His hand rested lightly on the handle of the door, his eyes locked on the exchange like a predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Brandon unzipped the backpack, pulled out a flash drive sealed in a plastic bag. The Russian's eyes gleamed as he reached for it. "Now," Dante murmured. The bridge erupted. Black SUVs surged forward from both ends, headlights cutting through the dark. Dante was out of our vehicle in a blur, Anton on his heels. Men poured onto the bridge, guns raised, shouts echoing against the water. Brandon froze, caught between 2 forces he couldn't possibly outrun. The Russians reacted fast. One drew his weapon, firing blindly. I ducked instinctively, my heart slamming against my ribs. Dante moved like the chaos was choreographed for him. He disarmed the first Russian in 2 fluid motions, sent the gun skittering across the bridge. Anton tackled the second, slamming him against the hood of the sedan. Brandon bolted. "Brandon," I screamed through the glass, pounding on the window, "don't you dare." But he ran. Of course he ran. Dante swore, sprinting after him. Brandon scrambled toward the far end of the bridge, weaving between parked cars, desperate and wild. I couldn't stay in the SUV. I couldn't just sit there while my life fell apart one more time. I threw the door open and ran into the night, my boots slipping on the slick pavement. Nora, Anton's voice bellowed, but I didn't stop. I caught sight of Brandon ahead, stumbling, clutching the flash drive. Dante was closing in, his long strides eating the distance. "Brandon," I shouted again, my voice tearing through the cold air. He glanced back. For a split second, our eyes met. His were wide, frantic, and then regret. But regret didn't slow him down. A shot rang out. I screamed, ducking. For a heartbeat, I thought I'd been hit. But Brandon staggered, clutching his arm, blood soaking through his sleeve. Dante reached him in 2 strides, slamming him against the steel railing. Brandon cried out, the flash drive tumbling from his grasp. It skidded across the pavement, stopping just inches from my boots. I bent, snatched it up, my hand trembling around the small piece of plastic that carried so much power. Dante's voice was low, lethal. "You're done, Brandon." Brandon whimpered, his face twisted with pain. You don't understand. They'll kill me if I don't. They'll kill you anyway, Dante said coldly. And they'll kill her too. His gaze flicked toward me, sharp as a blade. The Russians were being dragged away, restrained by Dante's men. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Someone must have called the police. We had seconds before this bridge became a war zone. Dante wrenched Brandon away from the railing, shoving him toward Anton. Take him. Brandon's panicked eyes locked on mine. Nora, please, tell them I was trying to save you, to save Lily. My throat closed. I wanted to believe him. God help me, I wanted to. But the unicorn backpack haunted me. The photographs. The ledger. And then the Russian nearest us spat words in his thick accent, laughing through bloodied lips. She doesn't know, does she? The Russian grinned, teeth stained red. Ask your lover, Morelli. He knows. Dante's gun pressed into the man's temple in an instant, his voice calm, deadly. Not another word. But it was too late. The words had already lodged in my chest like shrapnel. My name in the ledger. And Dante hadn't told me. I couldn't hear the sirens anymore. All I could hear were those words. Her name is in the ledger too. They rattled inside me, louder than the gunshots, louder than Brandon's pleas, louder even than Dante's commands. My name in his world. When the SUVs pulled away from the bridge, Brandon cuffed and bleeding in the back seat, I sat rigid beside him. The flash drive gripped so tightly in my fist that the plastic dug into my palm. He kept whispering, my name, Nora, please. But I refused to turn. I stared out at the Black River, refusing to let him see the tears burning my eyes. Dante rode in the front, silent. His profile was carved in stone, jaw clenched, hands steady on the wheel, even as the city lights flickered across his face. He knew he had to know. When we finally reached the estate, I was out of the car before anyone else, storming past Rose's startled expression in the foyer. I didn't wait for instructions. I didn't wait for permission. I climbed the stairs 2 at a time, the rage in my chest hotter than fear. Dante caught up to me just as I slammed the suite door shut. My voice cracked like a whip. He paused in the doorway, his presence filling the frame. You shouldn't, I said, don't. Lily stirred in the bed, murmuring in her sleep. I lowered my voice, trembling. You knew, didn't you? You knew my name was in that damn ledger. Silence, the kind that confirms everything. I let out a bitter laugh. So what does that make me, Dante? Another pawn? Another file in your cabinet of useful people? His eyes were steady, unreadable. It's not what you think. Then tell me. Because right now, all I see is my life reduced to a line in your empire. And you, I jabbed a finger toward him, my breath coming hard. Dante stepped inside, shutting the door behind him. If I had told you then, you would have run. Straight into the Russian's arms. You don't get to decide what I can handle. He moved closer, and for the first time I stepped back, my shoulders brushing the wall. His voice dropped to a low, dangerous rumble. Nora, if Volkov knows your name is in that ledger, it means Brandon gave it to him. You weren't a pawn. You were a shield. He tied you to my family so no one would dare touch you without inviting war. But war is already here. My stomach dropped. Brandon had written me in, not as a lover, not as Lily's mother, as a piece in his desperate game. My chest tightened. So what am I to you? Collateral, a liability. Dante's jaw tightened, then softly, a responsibility. I hated the way the word landed inside me, heavy, binding. I shoved past him, pacing the room. No, I'm done being someone else's responsibility. First Brandon, now you. I won't be the reason men die in back alleys, or the reason Lily grows up behind walls. Do you hear me? He watched me, silent, until my voice broke. Then he said, you're stronger than you. But strength doesn't mean refusing help. It means choosing where to stand. I turned on him, eyes blazing. And where exactly do you think I should stand, Dante? Beside you? Behind you? or in a grave dug by Russians who think I know more than I do? For the first time since I'd met him, he didn't have an immediate answer. Later that night, Rosa brought tea I didn't drink. She set it quietly on the nightstand, her sharp eyes softening when they landed on me. "You blame him," she said simply. I scoffed. She tilted her head, "Or he waited. Sometimes waiting is a form of protection." I glared. "That ledger could destroy lives, and mine is in it." "How is that protection?" Rosa's voice lowered. "Because now you belong to this house, and no one dares touch what belongs here." The words should have chilled me. They did, but underneath the chill was something else, something I didn't want to name: ownership, shelter, prison, sanctuary. Could a thing be all of them at once? When Rosa left, I sat by Lily's bed, stroking her curls as she breathed softly against her pillow. I whispered promises I wasn't sure I could, that she'd be safe, that she'd grow up free, that I wouldn't let men with guns and ledgers write her story the way they'd written mine. Behind me, the door creaked. Dante's voice, quiet. "I'm leaving tomorrow night. With or without you. Volkov won't stop, and Brandon knows too much. Decide where you stand, Nora." I can't turn. I kept stroking Lily's hair, whispering more to myself than to him. There have to be lines we don't cross. His footsteps paused, and what if crossing them is the only way to survive? The door closed softly, and I sat in the dim light, staring at my daughter, wondering which lines I'd be willing to erase if it meant she kept breathing. The night began to still. I'd learned something in the past days. Stillness in Dante Morelli's world was never peace. It was the coil before the strike. Lily was asleep early, worn out after playing in the garden with Rosa. I tucked Mr. Butter beneath her arm, kissed her warm forehead, and sat in the chair by the window. My body should have been grateful for the quiet, but my chest felt tight, my pulse too fast. Dante's words echoed in my head. "Decide where you stand, Nora." I didn't know where that was anymore. When the first crack split the night, I thought it was thunder. But there were no clouds, only a pale moon over the manicured lawns. The second crack was closer, sharper, and then the lights went out. Lily stirred. I pressed a hand over her chest, whispering, "Baby. It's just the power." But it wasn't. The hall erupted with footsteps, distant shouts, a crash of glass. My blood went cold. I grabbed Lily's hand and pulled her from the bed. "Shoes, sweetheart, now." My voice shook, but I kept it brisk, controlled. She obeyed, sleepy but sensing the urgency. The door burst open. Anton filled the frame, his gun raised, his voice a hiss. "Safe room now." He didn't need to say more. I scooped Lily into my arms and followed him down the dark hall. Red emergency lights flickered on, bathing the mansion in an eerie glow. Shouts echoed from downstairs, deep voices in Russian. My stomach lurched. We reached a reinforced steel door tucked behind a paneled wall. Anton keyed a code, shoved it open, and motioned me inside. But I froze. "Where's Dante?" "He's handling it." "Then I'm not staying in here." Anton's face hardened. "You'll only get in the way. Then give me something to not be in the way." My voice cracked with something fierce, something new. His eyes searched mine, calculating. Then, with a curse, he shoved a small earpiece into my palm. "Stay with Rosa. Relay what you hear. That's it." Before I could answer, he slammed the door shut. The lock thudded into place. Rosa appeared in the dim light of the safe room, her face calm but tight. "Sit. Keep her quiet." Lily clung to my shirt, whispering, "Mommy, what's happening?" I brushed her curls back. "We're safe here." But my own ears strained against the where Dante's voice cut sharp through static. "West Wing breached. 2 down. Push them back." Gunfire cracked, muffled but terrifying. My knees shook, but I forced myself to focus. "East windows clear," another voice reported. "Main hall compromised," Dante growled. "Anton, hold the staircase." I pressed the earpiece tighter. My lips moved before I could stop them. Southside is vulnerable. They'll try the terrace. It connects straight to the hall. There was silence. Then Dante's voice. Copy. My breath caught. They'd listened. Rosa's sharp eyes flicked to me. She said nothing, but something like respect flashed across her face. Minutes felt like hours. Each burst of gunfire vibrated through the walls. Each shout echoed through the cum. I knelt beside Lily, humming softly to drown the noise. But inside, I burned. I couldn't sit here. Not anymore. When the door cracked open again, Dante's voice barked, "Inside now." Anton shoved through, bleeding from a cut across his cheek, but still steady. He herded us into the hall, his jaw tight. "We're moving to the secondary room. This one's compromised." Rosa scooped Lily into her arms. I followed, heart hammering, the cum still buzzing in my ear. We reached the stairwell. Shadows shifted below. A Russian gunman surged up, weapon raised. I froze. Anton fired first. The man crumpled. Lily screamed into Rosa's shoulder. My body shook, adrenaline surging. Anton shoved me toward the stairs. "Keep moving." We bolted through another hall. The scent of smoke filled the air, something burning below. My eyes stung. At the far end, Dante appeared. His shirt was ripped, streaked with blood, not all his. His gun hung loose at his side, but his eyes burned. When he saw us, his jaw unclenched slightly. "Good, you're safe." Safe. The word rang hollow with bodies on the floor around him. We moved into another hidden chamber, this one deeper, colder, lined with steel. Dante sealed the door, then turned, his eyes locking on mine. "You called the terrace," he said. I swallowed. I saw it on the house tour. It was obvious. His expression shifted. Approval. I hated that it warmed me. Gunfire rattled again outside. Dante pressed his cum. "Hold positions. Sweep every room. I want Volkov's men dead or crawling." He wiped blood from his cheek with the back of his hand, then crouched in front of Lily. His voice softened. "You're brave, little one. Braver than most men I know." Lily sniffled, eyes wide. "Are you a superhero?" "Something like that." She pressed her face into Rosa's shoulder. I pressed my fists to my knees, shaking. "You almost died tonight," I whispered. Dante looked at me, steady as ever. "Almost doesn't count." I glared through tears. "That's not good enough." "Then don't break now, Nora. You're part of this fight, whether you want it or not." The cum crackled. Relief crashed over me so hard my knees nearly buckled. Dante reached out, steadying me with a hand at my elbow. His grip was warm, firm, too steady for the chaos around us. For one heartbeat, I leaned into it. Then I pulled back, whispering, "This isn't over. He'll come again." His eyes darkened. "Yes, and next time we'll be ready." I wanted to believe him, but as I held Lily close, smelling smoke in her curls, I wondered if ready was even possible when survival meant erasing the lines that had once made me human. Morning came to bright. I stood by the window of the East Suite, staring at the gardens washed in sunlight. The lawn looked perfect, glistening from the night's dew. Roses leaned heavy against the trellis, bees buzzing lazily. It was beautiful. It was peaceful. It was a lie. Inside, the mansion still smelled of smoke and gunpowder. Men were sweeping the grounds, removing bodies before the world woke up. The war had come to Dante Morelli's doorstep, and somehow we'd survived the long night. But survival carried a price. Behind me, Lily giggled softly. Rosa had brought her new pajamas, lavender silk that made her look like she belonged in a storybook, not in a fortress. She bounced on the bed, holding Mr. Butter high. "He says he's a guard dog now," she announced proudly. My throat ached. "That's good, sweetheart. We need all the guards we can get." She giggled again, oblivious. Children had a gift for forgetting, for turning even nightmares into games. But I couldn't forget. Not the shouts, not the gunfire. Not the sight of Dante bleeding in the dark hall while men tried to kill him. Not the terrifying thought of what would have happened if they had succeeded. Later, Rosa found me in the corridor. She pressed a plain envelope into my hand. "From him," she said, her sharp eyes unreadable. I opened it. Inside were 2 passports. Mine, Lily's, new names, new photos, stamped with details that looked frighteningly real, and cash. Thick stacks, enough to buy silence, enough to build a new life in another city, another country. My breath caught. "He said you could leave tonight," Rosa murmured. "A car will be ready. No one will follow." The words felt like freedom. They should have made me rejoice. But my chest only grew heavier. I whispered, "And if I stay?" Rosa's gaze didn't waver. "Then you must understand. Staying means more than safety." I clutched the envelope, my hands trembling. I found him in his study. He looked different in daylight, less like a phantom, more like a man. He was leaning over maps spread across the desk, circles and arrows marking territories, names scribbled in his sharp handwriting. He didn't look up when I entered. "You saw the passports." It wasn't a question. "Yes. You and Lily can disappear tonight. New names, new lives. No one will find you. Not Brandon, not Volkov, not me." The way he said it flat. Finally, his eyes met mine, blue, sharp, but softened by something I couldn't name. "Then you stay. Not as a prisoner. Not as leverage, as something else." My pulse stumbled. What's something else? He stepped closer, slow, deliberate, like approaching something fragile. "In 24 hours, you've shown more courage than men I've trusted for years. You put yourself between me and danger, between Lily and death. You don't belong in this war, Nora, but you've survived it. And he exhaled, the sound raw, unpolished. "I don't want to let you go." The words should have terrified me, possessive, dangerous, final. Instead, my heart pounded like it had been waiting for them. I whispered, "I don't even know who I am anymore." "You're the woman who stood her ground on a burning night, who made me keep my promises." His hand hovered near mine, not touching, but close enough that heat leaped between us. "And you're Lily's mother. That alone makes you untouchable." My eyes stung. I thought of Brandon, his lies, his cowardice, the way he'd run again and again. And then I thought of Dante, blood on his shirt, fury in his eyes, but standing, always standing. "What happens to us?" His voice was quiet. "Certain, then you live. Under my protection, with walls no one can breach, with resources you've never Lily will grow safe, educated, untouchable. And you." His gaze burned into mine. "You'll be more than a line in a ledger. You'll be mine." The words struck like lightning, terrifying, electric. "I can't decide tonight," I whispered, my throat raw. "You don't have to." His hand brushed mine, featherlight. "But the car leaves at midnight. If you're not in it, you've chosen." That night, I packed Lily's things. Not because I knew what I'd do, but because I needed the illusion of control. Her clothes, her medicine, Mr. Butter, each item folded, felt like a countdown. She watched me, her big eyes curious. "Are we going on another trip, Mommy?" My lips trembled. "Maybe, baby." She tilted her head. "Will Mr. Dante come too?" The innocence in her voice nearly broke me. "Why do you ask?" "Because he makes you less sad." She hugged Mr. Butter tight, and he said I was brave. Tears spilled before I could stop them. I pulled her into my arms, burying my face in her hair. "You are brave, braver than Mommy." When she finally fell asleep, I sat by the window, watching the clock creep toward midnight. The passports lay on the table. My entire life shrunk into paper and ink. At 11:58, I rose. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might break my ribs. I didn't go downstairs. I walked the opposite way, to his study. The door was open. He stood at the window, shirt unbuttoned at the collar, his posture rigid, as if bracing for disappointment. When he turned and saw me, something flickered across his face. Relief, disbelief, hunger. "I'm not running anymore," I said, my voice steady. "Not from Brandon, not from Volkov, and not from you." His eyes darkened, and in 2 strides he was in front of me. "Do you understand what that means?" "Yes." My breath hitched. "It means I'm choosing. Not safety. Not disappearance." For a long, suspended moment, we just stared at each other. His chest rose and fell, slow and deliberate. My pulse raced so fast I thought I'd collapse. Then his hand cupped my face, rough and steady. His voice dropped to a whisper meant only for me. "Then you're mine, Nora Hayes, and I protect what's mine." When his lips finally claimed mine, it wasn't gentle. It was fierce, consuming, a vow written in fire. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I didn't feel like prey. I felt like I had stepped into the storm by choice. And that's how Nora's life changed forever with just one wrong text. But Volkov is still alive, and his revenge will be brutal. Do you want to hear part 2 of this story? Then hit the like button, subscribe, and tell me in the comments if you're ready for the next chapter.